After tasting the egg porridge, the monk fed it to the severely injured Li. With careful care from the monks of Shaolin Temple, Li's injuries gradually healed. In order to repay their kindness, he decided to stay at the temple to help out, but he couldn't endure the vegetarian diet for long. After just a few days, Li couldn't bear it anymore. To supplement his meals, he targeted a wolfhound wandering in the temple. He set a trap with a bun, and when the dog fell for it, he tightened the rope he had prepared earlier around its neck, trapping it. At that moment, the abbot approached, startling him. He immediately pretended to be asleep, covering the dog with a blanket. Seeing this, the abbot's expression turned disdainful. Then he criticized him for a few words. After speaking, the abbot left. Li quickly uncovered the blanket, only to find the wolfhound had suffocated inside. Killing within the Shaolin Temple was a serious taboo, and now he realized the magnitude of his mistake. So, when nobody was looking, he sneaked out to bury the dog. But as soon as he finished burying it, he regretted it. So, without further ado, Li decided to grill the dog. Just as he was about to indulge, Sifu suddenly appeared. Unexpectedly, Sifu showed kindness and didn't blame him. Instead, he allowed Li to eat in peace. He said Li wasn't a monk of the Shaolin Temple, so the rules didn't apply to him. Sifu even introduced Li to 100 ways to cook dog meat. Upon learning that Sifu hadn't touched meat since becoming a Buddhist, Li offered the freshly grilled meat to Sifu to taste. Sifu was tempted but hesitated when he noticed disciples suddenly appearing around them, attracted by the aroma of the dog meat. Seeing this scene, Sifu thought it's better to share joy with others than to enjoy it alone. So, he passed the dog meat to the disciples to share, and one of them, in high spirits, even performed a drunken stick routine for everyone. Just as they were reveling, the abbot arrived upon hearing the commotion. Seeing him, everyone dispersed in a panic, leaving behind remnants of grilled meat everywhere. Li fled in panic into the forest, where he encountered a young woman who promptly began whipping him. Adhering to the principle of not fighting women, Li dodged her blows as he fled, but the woman pursued him relentlessly until Sifu intervened. It turned out the woman was Lan, Sifu's daughter, and the dog meat they had eaten earlier was Lan's sheepdog. Upon Sifu's persuasion, Lan decided not to pursue the matter further. However, to vent her frustration, she threw 2 eggs at Li, who ended up amusing her with his disheveled appearance. After Lan left, Sifu approached Li to explain. It turned out that years ago, when Sifu was being pursued by Wang's soldiers, he had to seek refuge in the Shaolin Temple and left his daughter to be raised by an elderly farmer who doted on her excessively. Li was shocked to hear this and then earnestly requested Sifu to take him as a disciple. He wanted to learn martial arts to avenge his father. It turned out that Li had a deep-seated grudge against Wang, as mentioned by Sifu earlier. During the late Sui dynasty, a rebel had declared himself king, and his nephew, Wang, was ruthlessly oppressing the people. Unable to bear it, Li and his father confronted Wang, but Li's father was brutally killed by Wang. Injured and fleeing, Li sought refuge in the Shaolin Temple, where Sifu took him in. Knowing his desire for revenge, Sifu explained that the Shaolin martial arts were not to be passed on, but Li was determined. He promptly shaved his head and became a novice monk at the temple, taking the name Ju Yuan. From then on, Li trained diligently with his fellow disciples, day after day, honing his skills until the floor was dented from their practice. One day, during a sparring session with a senior disciple, despite only being a novice for 3 months, Li's skill was on par with his seniors. They had agreed to stop at a certain point, but Li, momentarily lost in thought, mistook his senior for Wang. Li's expression turned fierce as he aggressively grabbed his senior's neck. Luckily, the abbot arrived just in time to stop him. The abbot was very angry and ordered him to face the wall for 3 days without practicing martial arts. Upon hearing that he couldn't harm others or practice martial arts, Li was furious. He realized that seeking revenge under these conditions was impossible. So, he decided to leave the Shaolin Temple and seek revenge against Wang on his own. Meanwhile, Wang's men were scouting for beautiful women to present to him, and they happened upon Lan, who was out tending to her sheep. Seeing her beauty, they captured her. Wang was at home, angry because there were no women available for his entertainment. One of Wang's subordinates arrived to report that they had captured a beautiful woman for him. Wang immediately grabbed her thigh and then tore her pants. In her desperation, Lan kicked him away. This action sparked Wang's interest even more. At that moment, Li burst in with a stick. Wang, caught off guard, dodged as Li approached. Grabbing a sword, Wang confronted Li, and then, fueled by alcohol, he executed the drunken sword technique. Li, seeing this, decisively countered with the Shaolin drunken stick technique. The two fought, seemingly swaying and stumbling, but in reality, each move was precise and aimed at vital points. After dozens of exchanges, neither had gained the upper hand. They fought from inside the house to outside, and when Wang fell into a water pool, he sobered up completely. Then, Wang's attacks became swift and relentless, making it difficult for Li to defend. At a critical moment, Lan intervened, using her whip to restrain Wang. At the same time, the authorities arrived, prompting the two to flee. After this incident, Lan let go of her past prejudices. She advised Li not to act impulsively and to return to the Shaolin Temple to reconsider his options. Realizing that his martial arts were no match for Wang's, Li decided to return to Shaolin to continue his training. From then on, he trained diligently, never stopping for a day. One day, while Li was training, he heard noises in the distance and saw Wang leading soldiers in pursuit of a man. Li blocked the pursuer's path by pushing down stones and then escorted the man into a nearby cave. Hearing about this, Lan brought food to help them. The man, relieved from the danger, revealed his identity as Li Shimin. He was on a mission to cross the Yellow River and asked for their help. Li and Lan exchanged glances and decided to assist him in crossing the river. The next day, Li and Lan disguised themselves as a newlywed couple to escort Li Shimin on his journey. However, halfway there, they encountered a large group of soldiers approaching. Without hesitation, the soldiers unleashed arrows, and during the confrontation, Li Shimin was shot in the leg. Seeing this, Li instructed Lan to take him and leave while he stayed behind to hold off the pursuers. Li skillfully fended off all the soldiers, but just then, Sifu arrived with his disciples to help, and with the assistance of the Shaolin monks, most of the soldiers were swiftly dealt with. Li continued to fight after explaining his motives. He was no longer the inexperienced novice monk he once was, effortlessly dispatching all the soldiers. However, Sifu was displeased with the excessive bloodshed, criticized him for causing too much bloodshed and decided to expel him from the temple. Li was shocked by this decision. Sifu was concerned that Li might fall into Wang's hands if he remained. Despite Li's attempts to explain, Sifu refused to listen and led his disciples back to the temple. Li followed closely behind, unaware that a surviving soldier hidden in the bushes was preparing to inform Wang of everything. Upon learning of this, Wang ordered the extermination of the Shaolin Temple. Wang, along with his soldiers, surrounded the Shaolin Temple. Upon hearing this, Li returned to the temple once again, willing to bear the blame alone. Sifu knew that the Shaolin Temple was facing a catastrophe, and to prevent Li from sacrificing himself, he entrusted his daughter to Li, instructing them to seek refuge with Li Shimin. With Wang's army closing in, wreaking havoc and killing indiscriminately, the abbot, feeling immense pain, decided to sacrifice himself to bring peace to the temple. Wang ordered his men to burn the abbot alive. Just then, Sifu arrived with his disciples. Sifu said that kindness couldn't change the situation, only martial force could protect Shaolin. After the abbot's death, Sifu was filled with sorrow. He attacked Wang, and they fought fiercely, neither gaining the upper hand. Seizing an opportunity, Sifu kicked Wang down, but to everyone's surprise, Wang emerged unscathed and killed one of the disciples. His brutality pushed the abbot, who had always adhered strictly to the rules, to abandon his restraint. The abbot ordered to kill without mercy. With this command, the Shaolin monks unleashed their full strength without holding back. Meanwhile, Wang, injured by Sifu's continuous strikes, ordered his archers to shoot. Sifu was hit by several arrows. In the midst of danger, Li and Lan arrived. As arrows continued to rain down, to preserve their strength, everyone temporarily took shelter inside the Shaolin Temple. Li couldn't wait to inform Sifu that Li Shimin had led troops across the river and was preparing to attack the capital. After instructing them to defend Shaolin, Sifu departed from this world, leaving everyone present in deep sorrow. At that moment, Wang was banging on the door outside, and soon, a large number of soldiers flooded into the Shaolin Temple. Just as everyone prepared to fight, a subordinate suddenly arrived with news that Li Shimin had already led his troops to capture the capital. Upon learning this, Wang immediately led his troops towards the capital, with Li and the others following closely behind. They sought vengeance for the monks of Shaolin who had met a tragic end. When Wang arrived at the capital, it had already fallen to Li Shimin's forces, and Li and his companions had caught up with Wang's army. Faced with attacks from both sides, Wang had no choice but to fight. He engaged in a fierce battle with Li. After extensive training, Li's martial arts skills had soared, leaving Wang unable to retaliate. Eventually, Li kicked Wang into the Yellow River. Refusing to accept defeat, Wang emerged from the water and charged at Li with a long sword. Li, wielding dual blades, continued the duel. However, Wang was clearly no match for Li at this point. After several rounds of intense combat, Li remained unscathed while Wang sustained numerous wounds. Realizing his defeat, Wang threw down his sword and launched a desperate attack. Li swiftly countered, stepping heavily on Wang before delivering a fatal blow to his chest. With this, the old grudges were settled, and Wang, who had caused harm and injustice to the people, met his end at the hands of Li. Following this, Li once again became a monk, and Li Shimin visited the Shaolin Temple in person to honor the martial monks, marking the beginning of Shaolin Temple's fame spreading far and wide.